Hey there everybody, Aaron here, and welcome back to the Goosebumps informational videos that I'm doing. This is the second one out of three, and we'll be talking about the house in this. Now, similar to the first video, I issue once again at the very beginning of the video a spoiler alert, just in case you haven't watched the videos. However, if you have seen, this should be coming out with video 8, I think. If as long as you've watched up through 6, I think is when the house stuff is done. So if you've watched up through that, great. Feel free to watch ahead. If you haven't and you're concerned about that being spoiled, then make sure that you stop watching this and go watch that first, and then come back and watch this, and at least you'll have seen and know what I am talking about with some of these items. The house has more than the neighborhood had, in my opinion. They did a lot more, and I feel like really a majority of the game kind of takes place in the house, even though it's really probably split pretty evenly between the house and the mall. The neighborhood part is extremely short. It seems to me anyway. I don't know, maybe I missed a huge chunk of content somewhere. I mean, there were doors that I know didn't get open in the neighborhood. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is the house. We'll come back to the house itself real quick after this, but I wanted to start with Aunt Dahlia, and that's because she was the one I was most interested in and had to look up. She's a character from what is actually a short story, one of, and was later they actually took that short story and adapted it into an episode for the TV show. But basically, it was this old witch that would, and I mean witch in the sense that like not as in angry old lady or anything like that. She was a witch that would use prunes to age children into grandparent age, for her friends or whatever to date, kind of thing. And so that's what the whole prune thing was. If you drank any of the prune juice or any of the juice that had anything to do with prunes in this, you would basically age rapidly and get a game over for it, as I did at least once, I'm pretty sure. And how we defeated her was using our own trick against her, which in this case caused her to disappear. A similar thing occurs in the short story, except she, what is it? It's something about she uses cookies or something in the episode and whatever. I don't remember the exact specifics of it now, but she was an interesting character. She was the first thing that I really noticed about the house once we got into the house and caught my eye and really made me wonder what was going on. So much so that I actually had to look her up, um, pretty much once I solved. I shouldn't say solved. It was, that implies that I was extremely intelligent about it, and I don't feel like I was. Um, Once I figured out what to do with her, and the unlabeled purple purple drink in the refrigerator that we picked up. So that would be that character. So the next thing we're going to talk about, of course, is the house itself, which is a reference to the book Welcome to the Dead House. In fact, this, as you can see with the comparison of the book art here and the art within the game, is all pretty much a dead ringer for the house itself. Within this book, this was not one that I read, unfortunately. I do remember the art, the cover art for this book, and it's not just from the game. Like I remember the cover of this book, but it was never one that I read or owned. Um, in this one, basically, a family moves into a new house, which is called the Dead House, obviously. And it's haunted in a way, kind of similar to this house to some extent, but I'm not going to give too much away about it. But that's the gist of that book. The kids just figure out what's going on, not surprisingly. But that's what this is a reference to. Uh, yeah. So I guess moving on. I guess we'll talk about this right away too. The ghosts, the three ghosts here. These are most likely references to different characters within the books, and it is somewhat a nod to the Welcome to the Dead House book itself as well, in a way. I didn't take the time to try and find out these exact characters, what these exact characters matched up with. I kind of suspect that the blonde boy that we took care of first is a reference to the Stay Out of the Basement book, which was mentioned in the last video. I don't know for sure. That's what it struck me as. I think the girl, the female ghost here, I believe, is probably a reference to one of the books we'll be talking about here pretty soon. And I don't know who the boy in the middle, the boy ghost in the middle, I don't know what he's a reference to specifically, but I imagine they're all references to the main characters of the different books, or at least characters within the other books. I just don't know. There's not really enough to go on here to try and figure out specifically without knowing, having personally read the books. Even to try and search online is kind of rough. If you have any ideas of who they are, for sure below, feel free to leave a comment below about it. I'm more than interested in finding out. So, moving on from there, I'm going to talk about the clock, as I kind of brought it up already. So, the clock. This is a reference to the book The Cuckoo Clock of Doom, I believe is what it is called. Um, and I think so this is going to go into spoiler territory right now. Skip ahead if you don't want it spoiled, but it's going to go into spoiler territory a little bit for both the book, for the book as well. So in this, we had to use the cuckoo clock. We had to snap the year 1988, I think it was, off of the clock's table there, because the clock allows the person to travel through time basically. Um, Normally, and in the book that's what happens, but in our case we just used it to basically eliminate the year 1988 from existence, which causes the ghost, the little girl ghost, to disappear. This happens to a character in the main book itself, and it is the original print of the book, the original run of the book. The year was actually still 1988 in that version. So like the one, if I had read it, would have said that. Their newer runs have had that year adjusted to match with what the current year that run is being published in, going through and stuff. So that has changed a little bit, but that's why 1988 mattered so much there. That was also the whole 27 years thing that they kept popping up with that I couldn't figure out. And that was because I never read this book. I did eventually figure it out just through messing around with it. Uh, I think that's all I needed to mention about that. But that's what's going on there with that particular item. The next item I'm going to mention is the camera. This is from, there's actually been a couple. I think there's 2 or 3 books that involve this camera, maybe. It's probably creeped up all over the place, I'd imagine. It's the camera from Say Cheese or Die, or Say Cheese and Die or something. I think it's Say Cheese and Die. And there's at least a second Say Cheese and Die, and there might be a third. I can't remember for sure off the top of my head. I've read all of the books up to before I, when I quit reading. And this camera is pretty neat. I have to give the developers of this game credit for the fact that this was an interesting way of giving players hints if you knew what this camera did. This camera basically, when whoever has a picture taken of themselves with this camera, it shows how they die, how you're gonna die. And so the books go through all of this. But so in this game, the mechanic really worked interesting for that, and I really do think that's a neat way of giving players hints. So that's why I took pictures of the different things that we encountered in some of the puzzles within here, um, including like the Monster Blood puzzle, or that we'll talk about in a minute. But you see that I take a picture of it before getting a game over, knowing I'm going to. But that, I really like, as far as the developers go, that's an amazing idea to take something that is canon from the books and give it to the player as a way for the player to gain hints about how to deal with the different people and stuff that you encounter in this. So that was really cool. I give props, 100% props for that. But that's basically the gist of it. All of the stories kind of revolve around what the camera does, and that's its main function. Um, so that's kind of what goes on with that one. The next thing I'm going to talk about happens way later in the house, right before we leave. But I'm going to talk about it because I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about it. But it is this mask here. This is from the book series The Haunted Mask, and I think there is at least a second haunted mask, and by now who knows how many there are. But this was a book. I did read these books. I owned the first two, and I did read those. And basically, this is a Halloween mask that, when it is worn, it will eventually fuse to your face and cause you to turn into whatever. There's a number of masks that are like this within those storybooks. But that's kind of what it deals with. In the first book, a little girl gets it for Halloween, and it's her quest to take it off afterwards. And so that's kind of what goes on there. That's why the sequence when we put it on to scare the beast from the east, like there's the player reaction that it is. I wish at the time I had been smart enough to actually wear the mask again just to see the game over for it, because I still, as I'm recording this, I haven't seen it yet. I'm gonna have to play the game again just to try and get all of the other stuff that I didn't get on the playthrough that you guys saw. So, but that's what's going on with that. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about what is probably my favorite. I wouldn't say favorite. This was, I thought, found this particular series of books to probably be one of the most interesting ones within the Goosebumps stuff that I read, and that's the Monster Blood books. There's, I don't even know how many now. There was at least three when I read them, I believe. I think there's four or five now. Um, but Monster's Blood, which you can see here, there's a couple things about it. One, if you eat it, if it is ingested, it causes the person to grow to ridiculous degrees. The other thing that it does is it basically devours or consumes anything that touches it. So that's the purpose we see it in here. I kind of imagine, after looking at stuff again, that if I had tasted it the one time when we first encountered it in the tunnels, that probably would have given a bad end, and it's another one I kind of wish I had seen. But I didn't think about it. I didn't actually remember that it did that. The growing thing, I had to uh, revitalize my memory on that one, because I actually was thinking that I knew that it consumed everything, so that's why I didn't touch it within the game. But there's a couple different variations of Monster Blood as well. One of them is an aqua-based one that isn't actually Monster Blood, but basically this is what Monster Blood really is it's basically a toy that was enchanted by a witch, and so it has an expiration date, which is how it is defeated. And I say defeated doing air quotes, but it's defeated because it just expires, and so it loses its magic and becomes nothing but gunk, basically. So I was not surprised to see Monster Blood used in this game in the ways that it was. I give the the puzzle with the gargoyle saliva, which I'm sure is a reference to something, but I didn't take the time to look it up, but I'm sure it is, was interesting. I give them props for that. And essentially, my idea process was correct on that. In the end, it's just that I was missing the gargoyle saliva, obviously, and I got that tip from the reading the one book and then using the camera to take a photo. So the next thing we're gonna move on to is I talked about this a little bit in the video itself. We've got two things left for the house that I'm going to talk about. The first one is the mirror. And it's from the book Let's Get Invisible. And as I mentioned in the video, this was the first book I remember ever having read to me. I remember sitting with my mom and my sister and my mom reading this book to us. Uh, I've reread it since then at different points, but basically in this book, there's a mirror universe. When certain people look in the mirror, it allows them to become visible. The problem is that if you spend too much time invisible, your evil twin will switch out with you. Is essentially what's going on here. And I kind of, again, I should have let that run its course when I was doing the playthrough just to see what happened. But and I do believe that the end where you throw the mirror in the game at it, the smaller mirror, I believe that is almost exactly what happens in the book. So, but that's what's up with the mirror. I have a lot of nostalgia for that particular one, a lot because of that. But it's interesting. So that one belongs to that. And now we'll take a look at the last one, the robot. So it is part of this is it. There's not much to say here because this is a give yourself goosebumps reference. These books I kind of talked about a little bit, but they're choose your own ending books. I don't know how many of you guys will actually remember what choose your own ending books are, depending on how old you are. They were a really big thing quite a few years ago. I don't know if they're still kind of a thing now or not, but I did read some of the Give Yourself Goosebumps books, but this one was not one of them. But it's toy terror batteries included. Give Yourself Goosebumps. And basically, this robot, the Annihilator 3000, is just it's one of the villains within the book and pops up in a couple different endings and stuff like that. But that's what he's from. Uh, so that is that. And I think that does it for this video. I think we've covered all of the things that I wanted to cover. As I said in the last video, if you have any information and you want to share anything, feel free to leave comments below about different references that I may not have talked about here, I may not have mentioned in the normal series. Feel free to do any of that. I'm more than willing to read that stuff. And hey, you never know, somebody else that's somebody else that's watching this might read it too. Like I said last time, if you want more information on any of this stuff, check out the Goosebumps wiki. There will be a link in the description below. And then tomorrow, with the release of the last episode of the series and the last of these info episodes on Halloween, we'll be talking about the mall, which probably won't be quite as long of a video. But that's going to do it for me today, everybody. As always, take care of yourselves, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.